My husband's best friend once bet him I'd cry when the divorce papers landed in my hands. At Christmas dinner, he laughed like it was already decided. Women are so predictable. But I didn't give him what he wanted. I signed the papers right there. No hesitation. Then I slid a wrapped present across the table, watched his smug face stiffen when he unwrapped it. From the living room, his best friend's voice carried over the sound of clinking glasses. Do you think she'll cry when she reads them? His laughter cut through me like glass. They didn't know I was just a few steps away in the hallway, holding a tray of drinks. My feet refused to move. My chest locked. My pulse thundered like a drum I couldn't silence. Then Brandon's voice.
Smooth. Smug.
Cool. She'll crumble. Women always do. That was 5 days before Christmas. But this story doesn't begin there. Not really. That was only the breaking point, the moment the mask finally fell. The unraveling started years earlier, with something far more subtle. With laughter. Always laughter. You know I could leave you tomorrow, right? Brandon used to joke at dinner parties, his hand warm on my shoulder, his eyes twinkling with fake affection. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But inside, something shrank, a knot tightening under my ribs. They didn't see it. Nobody saw it. The way his words stacked on me, heavy as bricks. The way his tone cut deeper than any knife. I stopped wearing my red dress after he smirked. Trying too hard, aren't we? I learned to pause before speaking in public, reading his mood, praying my sentence wouldn't trigger a monologue about my flaws. Brandon never shouted. He never raised a hand.
He was smarter than that.
His weapons were words, sweetened with charm, blades dipped in honey. Don't embarrass me in front of my boss. You're lucky I'm still here. Without me, what would you even do? Each comment disguised as humor, punctuated with a sip of whiskey, a laugh, the clink of ice in a glass. And I smiled. I always smiled. At first, I defended him. He's just sarcastic, I told Jenny, my childhood best friend, after she overheard one of his digs at a barbecue. But she didn't buy it. Her eyes lingered on me. He doesn't have to mean it. You look like you're disappearing. Maybe I was. I stopped posting on social media. Missed book club. Ignored my sister's calls. My world shrank until it fit inside Brandon's moods, his rhythms, his thresholds. He liked control. Quiet control. When my mother visited, he made sure to criticize the messy kitchen, loud enough for her to hear. If I forgot the dry cleaning, he muttered useless under his breath, just soft enough to deny it later. Still, I told myself this was marriage. Maybe not perfect, but steady. At least he wasn't cheating. At least he wasn't violent. At least. Until the gala. 2 glasses of champagne in, his eyes clouded with alcohol and contempt, he leaned close and whispered, "You're just like the rest of them. Always wanting more. Always clinging. Needy." My throat closed. My skin burned. I didn't ask why. I rarely did anymore. When we got home, he slammed the door, went straight for the liquor cabinet. I followed with careful steps, poured him another drink, handed it over with the practiced smile I'd worn for years. "You know," I said lightly, "maybe we should sign something."
Just in case.
"You always joke about leaving. Why not make it official?" He laughed.
Loud.
Dismissive. "You think I need a prenup for my fantasy football winnings?" Then, with a drunken flourish, he scribbled his name on a napkin.
There.
"Get it notarized if you're that scared." By morning, he forgot. But I didn't. Within 24 hours, I had it notarized. Jenny helped. She didn't ask questions, just pressed a pen into my hand and gave me a look that said everything she couldn't. I tucked the document into a fireproof envelope, buried it beneath a folder labeled Tax Receipts 2020. I scanned a copy too, emailed it to a private account Jenny had set up years before. That night, I cooked dinner as if nothing had changed. I asked Brandon about his day. I laughed at his impressions of his coworkers. I cleared the dishes while he scrolled his phone. He didn't notice the way I watched him now, not with fear, not with anger, but with calculation. In the weeks that followed, something in me shifted. Not loud, not obvious.
Quiet.
I started keeping a journal. A plain spiral notebook, hidden beneath the mattress. Each page became a ledger. His moods. His words. The time he stumbled home at 1:15 a.m., reeking of perfume and tequila. I wasn't planning yet. Not consciously. But the night of his company's New Year party, when he joked to a crowd of new hires that my hobby is overspending, I didn't cry. I excused myself, stared at my reflection in the restroom mirror. His voice rang in my head. He thought I was soft, breakable. And he was right. I had been. But I was learning. A few months later, while folding laundry, I found a receipt in his jeans. 2 wine glasses. A hotel room. Strawberries from room service. Dated Valentine's Day. We'd spent that night apart. He said he was out of town for work. I didn't confront him. I scanned the receipt, saved it, locked it away. It became a ritual. Quiet.
Steady.
Evidence, not emotions. Then one night over dinner, he leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said, "If we ever split, you'll be crawling back. You can't even fix the Wi-Fi without me." And I smiled. I had learned to smile, and I nodded, poured him another glass of wine, and whispered, "That's true." But inside, I no longer believed it. There's a silence that lives in houses like ours. Not peace, not calm, but a thread stretched too tight, ready to snap. Each room held words never spoken. Each smile I wore tasted like sickness. One night, I woke from a nightmare, his voice echoing inside my head. "You'll have nothing." I bolted upright, drenched in sweat, heart pounding against my ribs. And then, for the first time, something inside me whispered back, "That's not true anymore." I had the document, the dates, the trail. I had time. That night, the pretending stopped. From then on, I wasn't his wife. I was his shadow. Polite, polished, patient. Watching, recording, preparing. The napkin he thought was a joke, that was my foundation. A drunken scribble, my lifeline.
I didn't know when. I didn't know how.
But I knew he'd reach for the same tired power play one day. And when he did, I would be ready. I remember standing in Jenny's office. The fluorescent light buzzed above us, exposing truths I wasn't brave enough to say out loud. I handed her the document, Brandon's careless signature scrawled across it. She looked at me, stunned. "Did he do this willingly?" she asked, brows raised. I nodded, silent. Jenny leaned back, the leather chair groaning, slid on her glasses, and read in silence. Minutes ticked by. When she looked up, there was pity in her eyes, but also something sharper. Admiration. "It's elegant," she said, tapping the page. "He gave you the knife. Now you get to decide when to use it." My hands clenched together in my lap. I don't want revenge. I just want to feel safe. "You will," she promised. "But let's reinforce it. Let's make it unbreakable." Together, we added weight where it mattered. An addendum. Safeguards against every trick, every twist he might try if he ever filed first. Spousal protections. Financial clarity. His voluntary signature, dated in his own handwriting.
No coerción. No loophole.
His arrogance sealed into law. Jenny handed me a flash drive, a printed copy, and a look I hadn't seen since we were teenagers plotting behind the school library. Only this time it wasn't mischief. It was war. And we were planning the long game. "I'll keep a copy too," she said as I stood to leave. "Just in case." That night, I walked back into my house. Brandon was sprawled on the couch, a beer in hand, socks tossed carelessly on the floor. The TV flickered across his face as he laughed at a replay. I paused at the threshold. The noise rattled against walls I no longer belonged to. "Dinner's almost ready," I said. He grunted, eyes still glued to the screen. That was the beginning of my performance. And I played it to perfection. I became the wife he bragged about.
Polished.
Pleasant.
Perfect.
When he mocked my spending habits in front of friends, I laughed with him. When he boasted about his promotion at the annual party, I kissed his cheek, toasted him with a smile, though I knew his boss just wanted him gone. I complimented his wine choices, his restaurant picks, even his new cologne. A a scent that had nothing to do with the man I'd once fallen in love with. He thought I was softening. What he didn't see was that I was sharpening. Brandon relaxed, believing the fire in me had burned out. His arrogance returned. He stopped hiding. Late nights without excuses. His phone face up on the counter, messages flashing across the screen from numbers saved without names. I saw one from him.
They read, "Tonight?"
Same hotel. Minutes later, he left for the gym. I opened our laptop, synced his phone's data to my cloud folder, forwarded screenshots to the private email Jenny had set up years ago. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I closed the laptop, went to the kitchen, and made lasagna his favorite. He came home to a hot meal and a warmer smile, and he said it was the best dinner he'd had in weeks. A few weeks later, at a barbecue, his best friend Nate cornered him by the grill. Beer in hand, voice loud with arrogance. "She'll fall apart if you leave her. Too dependent. You've got it made, man." I stood just feet away, arranging strawberries in a spiral on the fruit tray. One slice at a time.
Perfect.
I didn't flinch. Not even when Brandon slipped behind me, slid his arm around my waist, and kissed my cheek like he hadn't vanished the night before. "You look beautiful today," he said. I smiled. "Thank you, sweetheart." The next day, I started recording his phone calls. Only the ones that mattered. The private conversations, the slips, the cruel jokes. Each file labeled, dated, and stored. I felt like a spy in my own home. But I wasn't seeking revenge. Not then. I was building a parachute. Quietly.
Carefully.
Because when you live inside a house full of cracks, you don't wait for it to fall. You learn where to step. And when to jump. I even bought a planner. Tiny symbols filled the margins. An X for late nights. A star for suspicious charges. A dot for lies I could prove. To anyone else it looked like grocery lists. But to me it was a map. Eventually, I stopped reacting at all.
No saís. No tears.
Not even a flinch. I became a mirror. He saw only what he wanted to see. A woman who had surrendered, folded herself neatly into the small space he carved. That illusion made him bold. He started leaving stacks of cash on the counter, fresh withdrawals with no explanation. He packed cologne and pressed shirts for business trips, though his calendar showed nothing but Zoom calls. One afternoon, I found a receipt with lipstick printed across the top, Temptress red. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I made a note. The final proof came 2 weeks before Christmas. He drank too much, passed out on the couch, his phone unlocked beside him. A message thread lit the screen. She doesn't suspect a thing. I'll file on Christmas. Want front row seats. A laughing emoji. A gif of a woman crying into a tissue. My fingers didn't tremble. My stomach didn't twist. I read the message twice. Took a screenshot. Emailed it to myself. Deleted the evidence from his phone. That night, lying next to him, I stared at the ceiling. He thought my heartbreak would be the centerpiece of his holiday. Cranberries, turkey, and my tears. But he wasn't the only one planning a performance. I had already chosen my stage, my audience, my moment. Because he had forgotten something critical. When you hand someone a knife, you can't be surprised when they learn how to use it. Christmas came dressed in perfection. The table gleamed like a magazine spread, garland glowing across the windows, candles flickering, the roast turkey glistening under Brandon's carving knife. He wore the maroon sweater I had given him last year, reindeer stitched across the chest. The irony wasn't lost on me. My sister Beth passed around her famous spiced wine, cheeks flushed. His parents chatted about retirement. The air buzzed with comfort and holiday cheer. I moved like a hostess on autopilot, smiling with my mouth but not my eyes. Beneath the table, my legs trembled. Not with fear, with anticipation. Tonight, tonight, tonight. As Brandon sliced the turkey, he caught my eye, winked. Overconfident.
Smug.
The same expression he wore before closing a sales deal. I smiled back, warm and unreadable. Let him think he had won. Best bird yet, his dad declared. She's perfected the recipe, Brandon added, placing the platter down like a trophy. 7th Christmas together, right? 8th, I corrected gently. Brandon lifted his glass. Well, here's to 8 more. Or however many we last. His voice carried that cruel lilt again, masked in humor, easy to deny. Laughter rippled around the table. I chuckled, brushing a crumb from my napkin. As the plates cleared and the wine softened the room, Nate leaned close to Brandon, whispering something with a lopsided smirk. Brandon nodded, then tapped his glass with a butter knife. Before dessert, he announced, I've got a little something for my lovely wife. Beth smiled at me, expecting jewelry, maybe a love note. Brandon reached into his blazer, pulled out a plain white envelope, and walked over with the smugness of a man about to deliver a finale. Merry Christmas, babe, he said, sliding it in front of me. Nate chuckled quietly. Nobody else laughed. The envelope looked wrong. No bow, no ribbon. Just paper. I opened it calmly. The table hushed. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Already signed. Already filed. A section highlighted, like homework proudly shown off. I looked up. His smile stretched wide. Expectant. So I smiled back. Thank you. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. Nate shifted uneasily. I reached into my clutch, pulled out a silver pen.
Click. Signed.
Dated.
Capped it.
Handed the papers back across the table with a soft, done. Beth's wide-eyed stare burned against me. Brandon blinked. That's it, he asked, feigning casual. That's it, I echoed. Then I reached beneath the table, lifted a gold-wrapped box, and set it between his plate and his ego. He frowned. What's this? Your real gift. He hesitated, then ripped the paper. Inside, an elegant leather folder. He opened it. His face drained of color. His lips moved silently, reading. Rereading. Notarized. Ironclad. Inescapable. The prenup he had mocked. The napkin turned weapon. His own hand had signed it. What is this? Nate asked, leaning closer. Brandon didn't answer.
So I did.
It's the agreement Brandon signed almost a year ago. Updated. Reinforced. Filed. But I filed first, Brandon stammered, desperate, as if that could erase reality. Which makes it legally binding under your terms, I replied with a calm smile. Every asset. Every clause. You gave it to me. Nate's mouth parted, stunned. Holy. You okay, man? Beth's husband asked from across the table. Brandon didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on the document, wide and unblinking. The same eyes that once scanned spreadsheets with surgical precision, that caught typos in contracts no one else noticed, had missed the one clause that cost him everything. His arrogance had blinded him. I reached into my purse again. One last thing, I said, my voice steady. I slid a small square envelope onto the table. It looked harmless, thinner than the first. He stared at it like it might detonate. Slowly, cautiously, he opened it. His brows furrowed. Inside was a sonogram. His head jerked up, eyes searching my face. I'm pregnant, I said, calm, unwavering. 8 weeks today. For a second, just one, his face softened. The ghost of a smile tugged at his lips, a reflex his ego couldn't smother. But it died quickly. The timeline clicked in his mind. The reality closed around him like iron bars. Prenup. Pregnancy. Assets. Custody. His world tilted. The man who thought he held every string now sat crushed beneath the weight of his own web. You planned this, he whispered finally, voice brittle. I met his stare, unflinching. You bet I'd cry. You laughed. Called me predictable. So no, Brandon. I didn't plan. I prepared. The silence thickened, heavy and suffocating. I took a sip of my wine, cinnamon clinging to my lips. Brandon's mother shifted back in her chair, pale as parchment. Beth's hand found mine under the table, her thumb pressing gently against my skin. Nate tried to form words, but ended up shaking his head, eyes darting away. Brandon's gaze fell back to the prenup like he could bend reality with sheer will.
But the ink was dry.
His own handwriting sealed it. I rose from my chair, began clearing plates no one had touched. My hands didn't tremble. My breath was even. Apple pie or pecan? I asked softly. The question hung unanswered in the air. He sat frozen, trapped inside the wreckage of his illusion. I wasn't broken. I wasn't begging. I was just getting started. Steph, he began, but I straightened, cutting him off. No, one word. Sharp.
Clean.
Irrevocable. He blinked, slow, dazed, like he couldn't recognize the woman in front of him. You don't have to do this, he pleaded, his voice cracking. Oh, but I'm not doing anything. I raised my glass without looking at him. You already did. To my right, his mother hunched forward, pearls trembling with her breath. His father rubbed his glasses with his napkin, though they were spotless. Beth's husband reached for more wine, thought better of it. Nate scratched his neck, the smugness drained from his face. My cousin Rachel stared wide-eyed, spoon hovering midair, frozen above sweet potatoes she would never taste. I studied them all, shame, disbelief, awe, confusion, each face painted by truth. Their silence became my standing ovation. Brandon leaned back, running a hand through his hair. I knew that gesture. I'd seen it after failed deals, after shouting matches with his boss, after excuses no one bought. It was his tell, his panic. You thought I'd beg, I said quietly, my voice calm, cutting through the stillness. You thought I'd fall apart. His jaw tightened. You were half right, I continued. I did fall apart until today. That was the moment I saw it. Fear. Not the loud, theatrical kind. Not anger disguised as power. Real fear. Subtle. Flickering. The kind of fear only born when a man who thought he was untouchable finally sees the ground disappear beneath his feet. Before he could speak again, his phone buzzed against the wood of the table.
Once. Twice.
A third time. He grabbed it, thumb shaky on the screen. His face drained further as he read. The subject line. Prenup confirmation. Legally binding. Jenny. I watched him scroll, his lips moving silently as his bravado unraveled. Line after line shredded him. At the bottom, Jenny's signature, her firm's letterhead, every backup file attached with timestamps. Ironclad. Irrefutable. Tell her it doesn't count, he muttered, clutching the phone like a lifeline. His voice sounded hollow, even to himself. Another buzz. This time from his father's email. Subject. Forwarded, signed prenup, dated documents. FYI. The man he once mocked as a legal dinosaur had just received undeniable proof that his golden boy had handed over everything. Not stolen. Not coerced. Voluntarily gifted. On a silver platter. Brandon lowered the phone like it had scorched him. His knuckles were pale, his breath shallow. I turned toward Beth, who had been silent through the storm, her eyes never leaving me. I could go for something sweet, I said, light, almost cheerful, as if the air hadn't just shifted. Can you pass the pie? Her lips parted, surprised. Then she caught on. Which one?
Apple, I said.
With whipped cream. She moved quickly, grateful for something to do. The sound of the knife slicing through crust was almost comforting, a normal noise in a night that was anything but. I rose, retrieved a clean plate from the buffet counter, and set it down beside her. Brandon's eyes tracked me the whole way, still wide, still trying to calculate, still trying to catch up to a reality already sprinting ahead of him. I set the pie in front of me, placed the fork gently on the edge of the plate. From my seat, I looked at him one last time that night. I'll have the locks changed tomorrow, I said simply. The words landed like a blow. His face shifted, shock, disbelief, the sting of recognition. I lifted my fork, took a bite of pie. Cinnamon warm, crust buttery, apples soft and sweet. I smiled. Not to mock him, not to perform, but because the taste reminded me of something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Brandon shoved back his chair, the legs scraping hard against the wood. You think you've won, he spat. I didn't answer. He didn't deserve one. He stormed out, leaving behind the prenup, the sonogram, and what was left of his pride scattered across the dining table like broken ornaments. For a long second, no one spoke. Then Beth exhaled sharply beside me. "I always hated that sweater," she muttered. Laughter flickered through the room, hesitant, fragile, then growing. Rachel let out a nervous giggle. Even Brandon's mother gave a quiet chuckle behind her napkin before quickly looking away. The tension cracked. The air shifted. I leaned into Beth, whispered, "Merry Christmas." She rested her head against my shoulder for a moment, a small weight of comfort I hadn't realized I'd needed. There were no fireworks.
No screaming. No scattered plats.
Just silence, broken only by the clink of forks, the shuffle of breath, the faint crackle of the fire. Power unraveled that night not with a bang but with paper, ink, and a single slice of pie. Beth stayed after everyone left.
She didn't ask. She didn't need to.
"You're not waking up alone tomorrow," she said simply. I nodded. We curled up in the guest room, me on my side, one hand resting over the small curve of my stomach. In the dark, Beth's hand brushed mine, quiet, wordless, warm. I hadn't realized until that moment how long I'd been holding my breath. When I finally let it go, it felt like someone else's exhale. Someone I hadn't met yet, someone freer. By morning, Brandon was gone. No note, no call, just silence. The coffee pot was cold. His keys were missing from the hook. The front door was locked from the inside. I made myself breakfast for the first time in weeks, not worrying if the toaster was too loud or if the clink of my fork would spark a sigh. By 9 a.m., I had the locksmith on the phone. "Emergency or standard change?" he asked. "Standard," I said, then paused. "But make it fast." He came that afternoon, a quiet man with kind eyes who didn't ask questions when I handed him Brandon's keys. "Make sure none of these work anymore," I told him. He nodded. When he left, I stood in the foyer with a new key in my palm.
Small. Ordinary.
But it was the first thing I'd owned alone in years. Not the house. Not yet. But the certainty. The freedom. That evening, I moved into the master bedroom. His scent lingered, sharp cologne clinging to the air. I opened every window, let December wind sweep the room, cold and clean. I stripped the sheets, shoved them into trash bags. Found a forgotten box of sandalwood candles in the closet, the kind I used to love before he told me they gave him headaches. I lit 3, watched the flames dance across the walls like they were celebrating with me. The next day, his mail started piling up. Red stamps shouting from envelopes. Final notice.
Past due.
Immediate action required. I stacked them neatly on a side table near the door. I didn't forward a single one. That evening Jenny called, her voice bubbling through the receiver. "You won't believe this. No, actually you will. Brandon's lawyer called this morning. I wish I'd seen his face when he realized what you've been holding." I curled into my blanket, smiling. "Is it official?" Jenny laughed softly. "It's official. He lost 70% overnight. And with the baby on the way," she paused for effect. "Let's just say he'll be writing checks so big he might need a payment plan." My smile widened. Not because of the money, not even close, but because I could finally sit in my own living room without bracing for war. "I'm proud of you," Jenny said, voice gentler now. Those words nearly broke me. "Thanks," I whispered, "for staying, even when I didn't know I needed someone." "You've always been strong, Steph," she said. "You just finally let yourself believe it." The fallout was quiet, like snow melting instead of crashing down. Some friends unfollowed. Some sent safe, polite texts. "I'm not taking sides." But others were braver. A message arrived from a woman I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. "I wish I had your strength." Days later, a bouquet of peonies landed on my doorstep. No card.
Just a note that read about time.
See, Brandon's assistant.
Claire.
Of course she knew. They all did. And soon, the whispers would spread. The man who once joked about training wives like interns had lost his audience. His best friend Nate stopped laughing in meetings. The comments dried up. The swagger disappeared. The empire of mockery he built collapsed quietly, one brick at a time. His colleagues noticed first. He started leaving work early, muttering to himself. Deadlines slipped past him like strangers in a crowd. Even Beth's husband whispered into the phone one night, unaware I was within earshot.
Nah, man.
He's been off. Like haunted. Haunted.
Good.
The man who once declared I'd be nothing without him now walked alone at lunch. The crowd that once fueled his ego had evaporated. Cruelty doesn't age well. It leaves you with silence. And me? I started small. Lavender soap again. The kind he once mocked as too girly. I painted the nursery a soft sage green, his least favorite color. I hung delicate string lights around the window, set a plush giraffe in the corner. Rituals of peace. Proof of life moving forward. After dinner, I lit candles. Drank herbal tea barefoot in the sunroom. Unbothered. One night, I caught myself humming while folding laundry. I hadn't done that since our second anniversary. It startled me. Joy sneaking back in, disguised as habit. I bought new bedsheets. White, speckled with tiny gold stars. Slept diagonally across the mattress. Because I could. One afternoon I saw him. Brandon. He was leaving a bank, phone pressed to his ear, expression tight with irritation. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did, and simply didn't know what to do. I kept walking. Didn't look back. Later that day, Jenny texted me a screenshot. His name was gone from the firm's quarterly newsletter. I sent back a single thumbs-up emoji. Then I made tea and watched the curtains sway with the wind. It wasn't revenge anymore. Not really. It was the freedom in small things. A quiet rebuild. A slow return to myself. The realization that the woman he tried to shatter was now rebuilding without him, and better. The first time I felt her kick, I was barefoot in the kitchen. Nina Simone played softly on vinyl. I was slicing peaches for pie. At first, it was faint, so faint I thought I'd imagined it. A whisper inside me. Then it happened again. A flutter. A rhythm. The knife slipped from my hand. I froze. Both palms pressed against my belly. Tears caught me off guard, sliding down my cheeks before I knew they were there. It wasn't just movement. It was a message. You're not alone. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in weeks. Short, deliberate. This baby will never hear yelling through a door. Never feel like they're walking on glass. Never confuse fear for love. I underlined the last line twice. My world had grown smaller, but warmer. Softer in all the right ways. Elena, my cousin, moved into the guest room during my second trimester. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a basket of lavender muffins. Same oversized hoodie. Same gold hoops she'd worn since college. She plopped down on the couch and said, "I'm not letting you do this alone. And someone has to stop you from eating pickles with ice cream." We fell into rhythm quickly. She worked from the kitchen table. Wore fuzzy socks in July. Never asked about Brandon, unless I brought him up, which I rarely did. That chapter had lost its power. Jenny dropped by with groceries, casseroles, and baby name books full of post-it notes. Page 37. Do not name her Tiffany. When I asked why, she laughed over tea. Because Tiffany in 7th grade cut my hair with safety scissors during art class. We laughed more those months than I had in years. Court filings and scars took a back seat. Conversations turned to recipes, stroller brands, crib colors, and Jenny's ex, who she swore was stalking her Pinterest boards. Silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was shared. The nursery bloomed, one piece at a time. I painted the walls a soft yellow. Refinished thrifted furniture until it glowed. A rocking chair arrived in a box big enough for 2 people to hide inside. Elena spent hours trying to assemble it before tossing down the instructions and declaring, "This is my villain origin story." We laughed until our faces ached. Then one quiet Sunday, I opened the closet and found it. A box wrapped in satin ribbon. Cedar clung faintly to the edges. I knew before I touched it. Our wedding photos. I sat on the floor, opened the lid. There we were, smiling, posing, believing. His hands on my waist. My eyes lit with dreams that had already turned to ash. But I didn't cry.
Not this time.
I placed each photo into an envelope one by one, then labeled the box, to release. I drove to the donation center, handed it over. No speech. No drama. Just release. I walked back to my car lighter. Stopped at a bookstore on the way home. Bought a blank leather journal with thick ivory pages. That night, I wrote across the first page. Plans that are only mine. Some entries were long. Others just a word. But they were all mine. By the time Christmas came again, the house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Not tension. The dining table felt smaller, cozier. No elaborate centerpieces. No wine glasses used as weapons. There was laughter, real, unforced. Beth's toddler dropped spoonfuls of mashed potatoes onto the floor, shouting, "Oh," like a magician pulling off a trick. My dad carved the turkey, while Elena failed at making vegan gravy. Jenny brought a date, her first in a year. I didn't feel envy. I felt full. And there, beside my nephew's high chair, sat another. White, decorated with little yellow stars. Waiting. Ready. For the love of my life, my daughter. Maybe she had his eyes. Just a flicker of resemblance. But everything else? All mine. Her cheeks glowed pink from the cold. Her tiny fingers curled around the edge of her tray, gripping it like she held the world steady. She babbled in her own secret language, every sound urgent, important, as if she was giving the speech of a lifetime. I didn't spend the evening scanning the door. I wasn't careful with my tone. I wasn't rehearsing answers in my head, waiting for a hidden jab. I was simply there. Present. Every bite of food tasted full. Every story shared between courses landed like a gift. The table didn't hold tension anymore. It held celebration. Not of survival. Of beginnings. After dinner, I sank into the armchair by the fire. My daughter lay asleep on my chest, her tiny breaths warming through the fabric of my sweater. Everyone else had drifted into the kitchen or stepped out into the winter night, but I stayed. I stayed with her. I stayed with peace. The kind of peace that once felt impossible. Fictional. I sipped my cocoa, kissed her forehead, and whispered into her soft hair. He said I'd be nothing without him. She stirred gently, her little hand curling tighter against me. My smile deepened. Turns out, I whispered, I'm everything without him.